What's up, guys? So a lot of you have been asking for a build guide of the build that I showcased, the Chayula eye level 82 kill. So I'm playing Detonate Dead Blood Mage. It's been really good so far, having no issues with mapping or any bossing content so far, and I'm quite excited to see how far we can scale the build. So before I get into the build, I just need to say that this build is heavily inspired by two YouTube videos. I've sort of taken the best pieces of both of their trees and done a little bit of my own tweaking. But shout out to Not Boring and Small and Jacob ST for both of them. Both have made Detonate Dead guides, and this is heavily inspired by them, so please do check out their channels as well. So let's get into it. So essentially, Ascendancy wise, we're taking Grasping Wounds, helps us in boss encounters, prevents us from dying to big hits. We've got Gore Spike for the increased crit scaling with life, and Sunder the Flesh obviously for the increased crit on Detonate Dead. So how we scale the damage on this build is Detonate Dead reads is a physical spell, AoE fire, and what we basically do is detonate corpse, which does physical damage equal to 20% of the corpse's maximum life, and we're running around with skeleton brutes, which we will scale the health up to. Mine at the moment are at 48,366, but obviously we can scale that up a bit more, and I'll go into more details about that in just a moment. So looking at the tree, this is what our tree is looking like. We move into the crit side of the tree. We've got more minion life. We've got some more max ES. Defensive wise, we are scaling a lot of ES and obviously life where we can. And we're taking all the minion nodes over here for, of course, chance to not destroy corpses, increased damage when you've consumed a corpse recently, etc. We've got jewel slots here, here, and I think that is it. On the jewel sockets, what we're looking for is increased damage when you've consumed a corpse recently. You can also get increased minion life, which works pretty well. But I do like the sapphire gems because you can also get increased cast speed as well as max ES like we have here. Mine are not perfect, and you can play around with these and mix and match them as you see fit. I've gone over into the corner here as well for the chance to inflict bleeding, which is really nice. Obviously, we're doing big physical hits with our Detonate Dead, and that bleeding can certainly help when we take on some of the bosses. So here's just a zoomed out view for those of you that would like to copy the tree. Perfect. Looking at the skills. So, well, let's take a look at the items first, shall we? So, most important part of the build is this over here. So, Enazune's Charge. So Enazune's Charge allows us to have an additional 25% chance to not destroy corpses, or well, not to consume corpses, which really helps with sustaining our skeleton brutes, because when the skeleton brutes are down, our damage is down. Not that much of a problem in maps, because obviously you can detonate the map enemies and do damage that way, but for the sake of bossing, it's really important. You can get a corruption on this to get it corrupted to above 30%, which is great. I have the build at the point where that isn't necessary, and I'd rather go for increased spell damage, or I believe there is also increased crit hit chance for spells that can corrupt onto the wand. Either of those are fine, and if you can't afford either of them, then just get the normal wand. It's totally fine. Gloves at the moment are a bit of just a stat stick, so just life resistances. The gain life per enemy killed is not that important, and I'm looking to replace these soon. My chest, energy shield, life, spirit, which is quite important if you don't have spirit on your amulet. I'll go into details in a moment as to why that's important, but this is my chest. You're looking for energy shield, you're looking for max life, and then resistances, of course, unless you can get spirit on your amulet. Boots is pretty much the same. We're wanting resistances and life and energy shield on pretty much every piece of gear. I have life on all of my gear pieces except for, no, actually I have it on all my gear pieces. So I've got on my rings. Rings, you want obviously resistances. Cast speed is pretty nice. But for the moment, I'm just using it as a ways to sort of sort out my resistances. There is a way you can get increased fire damage. I don't believe that it is that important. I think the most important area would be the amulet, which can roll +3 of minion skills. Obviously, this amulet is pretty insane for the build. Spell damage, max life, minion levels. Most important thing on the amulet will be the plus to minion gems. That's how we scale most of our damage, is through getting levels on Skeleton Brute. And then obviously the most important is the scepter. So what you're looking for is a high spirit roll. In my case, I've got 187. And you're looking for plus to minion skills, and minions have increased life for the other. Stats do not matter. And preferably, you want this on a Omen Scepter. The reason you want it on an Omen Scepter is because of the critical weakness that's applied. Critical weakness affects targets to have plus 0.5 crit hit chance. It stacks up to 20 times. So really helps with the bossing damage, and that's the reason why these Omen Scepters tend to go for a little bit more, because of that powerful aura that it grants. And the aura doesn't reserve anything. It just goes on automatically. If you're struggling for money, then don't worry about it being an Omen Scepter. Any normal Scepter will do. And yeah, that's about it for the gear. Pretty standard. Life and mana flasks don't really matter too much. I never press them. And then, of course, at Zeri's Disdain is the helmet. Super good, cheap helmet that can help you survive early on. I've got mine corrupted up to 35. It actually just normally rolls between 25 and 30% of max life as extra energy shield. This, as you can see, gives me a crazy amount of energy shield. And when you pair that with Grim Feast, which I'll go into in a second, you're going to be walking around the map with an effective hit pool of around 15,000. You can scale that even more depending on how you tweak the tree, as and how you see fit. So I'll just go into the skills now. We don't use Volatile Dead. Malice casts itself automatically, so that's fine. Life Remnants, we have a support for Cannibalism, which allows us to recover 4% of our life while it's active. Just helps the quality of life of the build when you're in sticky situations where you're taking damage over time, which is obviously a weakness of the build. You're killing packs of mobs and your health bar just shoots up, and you basically struggle to die from that point. Grim Feast is an absolute must-have. It allows us to get an insane amount of energy shield. We obviously get over energy shield. Once we kill minions, you basically just run around the map and stay at 15,000 effective hit points throughout your whole mapping experience. Obviously, most importantly, Detonate Dead. So I've got my Detonate Dead at level 7. I recommend that you do the same. We do not gain any benefit from scaling the Detonate Dead skill gem. All it does is add fire damage to the build. It doesn't actually increase the physical damage of the spell. So getting this to a high level is more detrimental than it is good. So if you can get this to level 7, then that's great. I've got mine with 5 support gems. Also not necessarily important. You can leave that to last if you don't have the funds for a perfect Duelist. Support gems, we've got Corpse Conservation, which is the most important. It allows us to have 25% to not consume a corpse. So along with the wand, the tree, and the support gem, we are at, I believe, 75% chance for corpse to not be consumed. So as we run around the map and detonate the corpses, you can see here, they pretty much just infinitely sustain themselves. So back to support gems, we've got Corpse Conservation, we've got Brutality for extra fizz, we've got Spell Echo, which really helps with the clear, Minion Pact, which helps scale the damage, and then Magnified Effect, which just gives us extra area of effect. If I were to drop one of the links, I would probably drop Magnified Effect, for which we do swap out for Considered Casting when we do bosses. So you can take this out and swap it for Considered Casting when you're doing bossing for an extra damage boost. But for now, this is pretty optimal for Detonate Dead. We've got Skeleton Brutes here. Also, it's not necessary to have 4 supports. These 3 supports are the most important. You got Meat Shield, which gives them more max life. You got +1 Fizz and +1 minions, so it gives us 2 extra levels for the Skelly Brutes, which is really nice. Sacrifice allows us to target our own minions for Detonate Dead, so this is an essential support, or it's an essential spirit spell, buff, whatever you want to call it. Vulnerability Curse, we really only use for bosses, so you drop the curse and causes the boss to take more physical damage, basically, because it lowers their armor. We've also got increased effective curses through heightened curse. Soul Offering, again, we kind of only use for bossing. You proc it and it spikes one of your minions, gives you extra spell damage. For that, we've got Ablation Support, Persistence, and Inspiration. And then for quality of life of the build, we have Skeleton Clerics. The clerics are being supported by Ingenuity, Elemental Army, and Last Gasp. I basically have no downtime on my minions. I'm able to just run through the whole map, pop the minions, and you know, life is all good and well. And as you can see, I'm level 92, about to reach 93, and the build is very, very comfortable. I basically just run around with 3 spells in my hotbar. In terms of how the build plays, I would recommend if you have a mouse with some side buttons. I have direct minion on my side mouse button, so essentially I'm running around the map constantly directing my minions ahead of me, and then I'm just right clicking to pop the minions, and that is literally about it. The build is extremely easy, really high damage. Looking at my showcase, it looks like with my bossing setup with all my conditionals up, my damage at the moment is 1.7 million damage per second. That's pinnacle DPS, and obviously we can take that a little bit further. But yeah, the last thing that I just forgot to mention is if you're looking at anoints, I've got anoint for sturdy ally, which gives minions 25% more max HP, which obviously just helps us scale our damage. But yeah, that is about it, guys. If you do have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments. And yeah, good luck with the build.